Hello, I'm Deborah Sword.
Hi everyone, my name is Tyson. Deborah, I have a question for you. Do you trust me?
Oh, absolutely. And I trusted you even before I knew you.
Thank you for that. I trust you as well. Um, I want to kind of talk a little bit about trust in the context of conflict. What would the conflict owner's manual say about how important trust is to being in conflict with someone else?
So I want to quote Dr. Sissela Bok, who said, whatever matters to human beings, trust is the atmosphere in which it thrives. And to add to that, conflict is such a part of being human
Mm,
that it is uh, necessary to have trust in our lives. And I want to say one further thing about that, which is trust is nice, but not necessary in order to be conflict competent. You can solve your conflicts, you can be conflict competent, you can manage your conflicts, even in low trust, but it's so much easier to live if you have a mindset of trustworthiness. So let's talk about that. Where do you see trustworthiness fitting into conflict?
Well, I think about the quote by Adrienne Marie Brown, which is like move at the speed of trust, right? And focus on those critical connections and then critical mass. She's talking about kind of organizing, but I think what's really important there is like build the resilience by building the relationships. And I think sometimes the conflict that can happen is when the expectations of how much the other person trusts each other isn't really there yet. So, for example, Deborah, you said that you trusted me before you knew me, and I'm really glad that has happened. My reputation is intact, I would say. But part of that, though, is I think if let's say I did do something that broke that trust, I could say, "Well, you don't know me. What are you talking about? Like this is who I am." Um, and I think then the conversation comes back to, oh well, I guess the expectations that you may have had and I would have had that really wasn't grounded in on trust, right? And so I think about just like when people come into conflict with each other, I often think about, well, what's the quality of the relationship? And maybe oftentimes one person is further along on because they're maybe more trusting than the other person. And I guess you need to be reflective enough to be able to talk about those things. But that's often what I think about when I see sometimes when people are in conflict. Um,
Yeah, and we've talked about expectations being a
mhm,
driver of trust. But the idea that I trusted you, part of trust is being trustworthy yourself. And if you give trust, you get
mhm,
trust. And people make decisions about that very, very quickly. We decide almost right away if we like someone, if we trust someone. And once that opinion forms, it gets sticky on your mental model. It's like you put a pin in your mental map. This person is a particular way. And once
mhm,
it sticks, that becomes in your mental model who that person really is, whether they see themselves that way or not. But it's hard to change your mind. And that makes the conflict sticky too, because you have that person identified a particular way on your mental map. So, to be conflict competent, we should really be aware of our trust issues. And I want to say that trust is built through specific attributes, and some of them are integrity, credibility, authenticity,
mhm,
empathy, and engagement. So, if I show up in the world and try to show that I have integrity and credibility, that I'm authentic, empathetic, and I engage with you, those are trust building measures. And I want you to accept me that that's the way I am. And one of the ways that I get you to accept me is by extending that courtesy to you as well, saying, I trust you, that I will see that you as someone with integrity and credibility and authenticity until you prove me wrong.
So, for example, with like low trust, I feel like it's maybe a bit more straightforward, a bit more, the conflict is quite narrow, or maybe you don't, you speak your mind and you just say it, but you don't really care what the other person thinks. You're there just to, either defend or to make your point across and make things really clear. I feel like in low trust, that's happened because the stakes aren't as high. But when do you have to start to know that you need more trust in order to resolve a conflict?
Well, that's a great question. And I'm always going to try for higher trust for
Okay.
confidence building measures and trust building. Um, but sometimes you just want to get the deal done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's transactional. Let's come to an agreement, put it in writing, go our separate ways. Part of this is the fundamental attribution rule. So the fundamental attribution rule, or sometimes it's called fundamental attribution error, is that we tend to see ourselves as trustworthy, but not the other guy. Meanwhile, the other guy sees themselves as more trustworthy than you are. And it's how we attribute it. So I know what I think and what my intentions are. So I attribute good intentions to me. And if I fail, it's because of circumstances beyond my control. But if you fail, it's because you're just that kind of a guy.
Mm, mm.
So we attribute good intentions and effort to ourselves, and circumstances might be against us. But if you fail, it's because you have a character flaw. We don't attribute the same courtesy to you. But with trust, if you extend trust to the other person, it tends to be more reciprocal and it's more about relationship building.
That
Um,
idea that if you trust the people, they become trustworthy.
Theoretically, yes, but you keep trying. Sometimes it's not a one and done. But the other conflict competence is to understand that cultures are different and people are different. So different cultures see trust differently. And before you judge someone, say they don't answer a question directly or they don't make eye contact, so you're thinking they're kind of shady characters, or maybe that they're rude, but maybe in their culture, making eye contact is considered rude. Um, Maybe the person is somewhere on a spectrum where eye contact is uncomfortable. So before you judge someone as untrustworthy, consider that it's possible that it's their discomfort. But confidence building measures can help you correct any misconceptions you have about the other person. So extend that confidence building measure to them. So some of that is don't believe everything you hear about them on social media.
Right. I mean, that essentially, it's very easy to have conflict with someone that you don't trust, right? And so the, what I hear you saying is like, let's move forward with good intentions, right? And that everyone is until proven otherwise. But I think like that's a really important attitude to have, especially coming into conflict. And maybe that's the reason why you have conflict, right? Is because of maybe that idea of like, well, everyone's out to get me, or I've heard these things about this person. And so like those help inform how we might be approaching that conflict. And so trust, I think, is incredibly important.
And that brings up another point is about who goes first. 'Cause
Mm.
you're talking about extending this courtesy to them. Sometimes you do go first. So that's to break down a barrier to communication. You express your honesty, even if that means going first. Everybody waits for the other person to start, like, not my fault, not my job. But extend your honesty and courtesy and show appreciation when they're honest and courteous. You're breaking down the barriers to communication and finding what interests you might share. And as you say, trust begets trust. So if you are trustworthy yourself, uh, you can elicit trust from the other person. And Tyson, I want to bring up one other thing, which is what do you do when trust is broken? Trust is built by being reliable over time. So
Mm,
if trust is broken, it's not going to build itself. You have to make an effort. Trustworthiness isn't like a jacket that you
mm,
take on or put on or take off depending on the weather. It's an internal quality, it's part of your mindset. It's what you value and what you earn. And if you lose trust, you have to rebuild it by keeping your promises, being vulnerable, asking for help, admit what you don't know, and apologize when you make a mistake.
mm. I'm so glad that you are the author of Conflict Owner's Manual. And I hope that folks can come back next time as we dive deeper into the work of Conflict Owner's Manual. You can like, subscribe, follow along, and we hope to see you next week.
Thank you very much for listening.